This is WBCR in Bloomfield, New Jersey. The time is 11:31, and you're listening to DIY World Improvement. I'm your host, Catherine Carlozzi. All across our country, soldiers who've returned from Iraq and Afghanistan are trying to pick up the pieces of their lives. It's a difficult reentry, made even harder by the lingering effects of the recession. And with so many returning, the government safety net is getting stretched pretty thin. My guest today founded one of a growing number of organizations that are helping to take up the slack in different areas. It's called the Tip of the Arrow Foundation, and it provides career counseling and transition assistance to returning service members. Collectively, Tip of the Arrow co-founders Carl Blum and Bob Deissig have more than 6 decades of experience in successfully placing managers and executives in jobs. Coincidentally, they each founded a recruiting services firm here in the New York metro area in 1975 to serve Fortune 500 clients. Bob later went on to head the staffing services division of the Ayers Group, which happens to be one of my clients, and that's where he and I met 9 years ago. Bob and Carl also coincidentally retired at the same time in 2007. Now, these are not the kinds of guys who are happy just sitting around and playing golf. Bob splits his time between Phoenix and New York, and he is a very highly decorated Vietnam veteran who served as captain in the U.S. Army Infantry. Carl became a volunteer firefighter after 9/11 at the age of 59. He held a number of elected offices in Boonton Township, New Jersey, including fire department president, fire commissioner, and township committeeman. It is really good to have you gentlemen here in the studio with me today, and thanks for coming out on such a rainy morning to Bloomfield College. Tell us how it is that, there's so many coincidences in your lives, how it was that you came together to create Tip of the Arrow, and why the focus on the National Guard and the reservists.
Carl had tracked me down almost 3 years ago. He had decided that he wanted to do something with veterans of the Afghan-Iraq conflicts and wanted to talk about building an organization. Carl and I had worked together many, many years ago, and he reached out and asked me if we could do this together. I had just retired, and when he described what it was he was looking to do, I just really jumped into it.
Bob is one of the most heavily decorated Vietnam veterans. He's a recipient of 2 Silver Stars, 4 Bronze Stars, 3 with V devices, and 2 Purple Hearts. The Tip of the Arrow is the only free one-on-one job assistance program available to our servicemen and servicewomen in the United States. It is almost obscene that we are the only ones. We are the only ones particularly focused on the National Guard and Reserves because there are no services for these men and women when they return from conflict. In the 2 years that we've been in existence, we've placed or assisted 200 veterans into important and exciting careers. Every time you place a veteran, you save a life because there is no safety net. And America does not realize we're at war. I'm very, very proud. This is the most gratifying thing I've ever done in my life.
Do you have a geographic focus?
We operate out of Fort Dix, which is the largest demobilization facility in the United States for Reserve and National Guard soldiers. We've done a lot of work in New Jersey because a year and a half ago, the New Jersey 50th Infantry Brigade, which was about 3,500 soldiers, returned from Iraq. And a month after that, the 56th Stryker from Pennsylvania also returned, and there were about 5,000 soldiers. However, because of the fact that it's a demobilization facility, there are units that come through there that go to all parts of the country once they finish their debriefing.
So the people you work with are basically all over the country?
All over the country.
We've placed veterans in at least 30 states. In fact, the state of Vermont asked us to lead the reintegration of a 1,500 battle brigade returning from Afghanistan last month. We have developed a national reputation. We are on the ground in hand-to-hand combat for employment with our veterans. We are the only ones.
And I want to talk a little bit how you connect with the returning soldiers, because I know, Bob, you told me you are the only civilian organization allowed at Fort Dix, and you're there as the planes come in. So talk about all the different ways that you connect with these returning service members.
There are a number of ways. Certainly meeting the soldiers when they return from their deployments at Fort Dix, either Carl or myself. We have folks who are part of our organization on a volunteer basis who work at Fort Dix who also do the debriefing briefings when we're not there. So that's a major part of the influx of soldiers. They also go to our website and find out what we've been doing because they've been referred there. And certainly soldiers that we have worked with tell their friends about us, and they reach out to us. The National Guard of Vermont heard of us through the National Guard in Washington. So there's a variety of ways, but people find us.
It's really exciting. As a crummy civilian, I have watched veterans come off planes with their weapons, sitting in front of me. After a 20-hour flight, the last thing they want to hear is anyone speaking to them. They want to escape and go home. Everyone before us is so boring, you could vomit. The VA, all the things that are necessary and appropriate. Bob and I get them jumping in the aisles. We're like Abbott and Costello.
I can see that.
But we make it fun, but we still deliver a very important message. And we know they're not ready to start looking for work, but it's an opportunity for us to tell them about a program, to get some information into their hands. We asked those who are going to be in need of support to sign up with their contact information so that 60 days or thereabouts after they've returned, they know that either Carl, myself, or one of our volunteer coaches will reach out to them to begin the process.
We also focus on enlisted soldiers. There is no mechanism for the grunts or the non-commissioned officers to find work. Any of the programs or corporations that are looking for veterans generally look for junior officers, people like lieutenants, captains, colonels, majors, and generals. So we are focusing on the people that have the most difficulty in finding employment, and we have been very successful.
And let's talk about how you work with these veterans. Okay, so, they're back and you've met them, you've talked about the program. You give them 60 days to sort of begin the transition and get reintegrated with their families and their communities and everything. What happens next?
Well, there are a number of things. One of the most important things that we have found is that the soldiers really have a hard time recognizing how special they are and what they've done during their deployments. So the most important thing that we do is really get them to start talking about what it is they've accomplished. You will hear, well, I was just a driver, or I was just a medic. And then when you start asking questions and start peeling away, the exterior of that, there are some amazing stories that come out. And once they begin talking about it, then they begin to realize that the dimensions of what they've accomplished are really significant. So that information then can go into a workable resume, which we certainly help them with. But they also know that they now have a narrative, what we refer to as their thread of excellence, that they can talk about when they sit in front of a prospective employer. So it's helping them develop a job search strategy, what kind of companies they should be going after, how to go out there and actually interview effectively. The whole job search process is what we coach them through.
A veteran in the field never gives themselves credit for what they do. It's just a job. We extract that information and break down the variables, components that go into that job that make them exceptional. A squad leader of a combat troop is responsible for the lives of 7 veterans. He can do any job that any of those 7 veterans can do. Not only that, he has trained them to replace him if he is injured. The teamwork and they make more decisions in 15 seconds than a civilian will make in their entire life. They're extraordinary.
And I know that one of the things you need to do and that you do is to leverage, your collective professional experience for all the years that you were placing people in jobs in this area with potential employers. What are some of the companies where you've been helping these service people land?
We have a group of companies that have been extraordinary in their support of our veterans. Comcast has recruited and hired almost 50 veterans from the tip of the arrow. And these are in communication technician spots, which are wonderful jobs for enlisted men. J.B. Hunt is extraordinary. Workforce.org is an organization involved with Prudential Life. We placed 16 veterans in a program where they are coming out as computer programmers after a 39-week training program where they are being paid. So enlisted men and women, some of them with GEDs, have transformed their life and raised their standards and allowed themselves to be part of the American dream. Novartis has been extraordinarily supportive, both financially, They've written the brochures, and this October, for the first time, they're running a Veterans Disability Program where they will be hiring veterans as interns. And I also want to mention INCES, which is a computer consulting firm, which is going to hire 5 of our veterans and start them from day one as computer programmers at $42,000. And at the end of 6 months, they will be computer programmers working for United Healthcare at salaries of $50,000.
I got in touch with one of the companies you mentioned, J.B. Hunt, and I spoke with Senior HR Director Eric Arola, who's based at their headquarters in Arkansas, and also Matt Kaczynski, who's the Regional Manager for the Northeast, who's based right here in New Jersey. Eric, I know the company has been in GI Jobs Magazine's Top 100 Military-Friendly Employers 5 times. What did you rank this year?
Our rank for 2011 is 24.
You've received 2 Patriot Awards and have currently been nominated for a Freedom Award from Employer Support for the Guard and Reserve, ESGR as it's known, which is a Department of Defense organization. How many military veterans do you employ company-wide?
J.B. Hunt total is about 15,000 employees, and of those, around 15.5% are military background, about 2,400 of them.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the roles that they fill within the company?
The majority of our employees are drivers, probably about 70%. So we have a lot of military veterans, of course, that make up the driving rank. And we also hire a lot of folks to go into our management rank and also to work as what we call installers or installation specialists in some of our dedicated accounts.
What are the advantages to J.B. Hunt of hiring veterans?
First of all, they have extensive leadership normally, and that's what we really look for. As opposed to a recent college graduate, most of the veterans that we hire have some form of secondary education, and that along with their military service is a exceptional value that they bring to our organization.
Let me add to that, and just to say that when we look for military veterans, a lot of our job opportunities, we ask for our employees to go out and operate almost somewhat independently. We're a very customer-focused company, and a lot of our employment takes place actually on-site at a customer's location. So a lot of the people that we'll bring in, especially in our management ranks, we'll expect them to go through a training process and then apprentice for maybe a period of a few months before they're able to go out on-site to a customer's location and run really a little operation, to run the actual transportation there, to supervise the drivers, to work hand-in-hand with the customers, to look at their traffic management, and to run the profit and loss of the actual account itself. Mm-hmm. So we look for people coming out of the military that bring to us some type of ability and proven leadership record. They've either handled people, they've handled materials, they've been responsible for something. And a lot of our military folks come out with that great work ethic and responsibility already stamped on their resume that says, hey, you can throw it at me and I'll be able to handle it. Same with all of our other jobs, driving positions as well. When you're out there handling an 80,000-pound vehicle on the public highways, we look for somebody that's got a proven track record that can go in, take ownership of that vehicle, and make sure the freight gets delivered not only on time, but also safely. And that's our commitment to the public, and that's why we think military veterans make such good employees. Most of them are responsible. They've had positions of responsibility in the past where they've had authority, they've been able to take ownership of things, and they're able to pass that into our business and either taking ownership of our materials, our equipment, people, and then the customer relationship.
Matt, Chris Tomlin talked about your relationship with Carl and how Carl introduced him to you at a job fair in New Jersey. You're obviously out there recruiting veterans on your own. What is it that working with Tip of the Arrow brings to the table?
Tip of the Arrow brings a different side than the normal services would that promote veterans into civilian employment. Tip of the Arrow is a nonprofit organization, so they're not charging the company or the service member coming out, a fee to, help find employment, whether it be interviewing skills, resume building, or matching up with employers. And that was something that really stuck out to me when I met Carl and started talking about his group that made me think about, this should be a great company to pair up with because they have a great moral compass. They were doing things for the service members. It wasn't for their financial gain. It was in the good of their heart to help out the service members.
And how many veterans have you hired through your contact with Tip of the Arrow?
To date, 7. Tip of the Arrow is such a win-win for both J.B. Hunt and the service member. Not only just J.B. Hunt, but any other employer that likes to bring veterans in, and from a standpoint of their excellent employees, but also something that we're giving back to the folks that are out there serving the country too. It's really our pleasure to go out and look for veterans and help them get assimilated back into the workforce. Tip of the Arrow is just a great opportunity for both them and for us.
They clearly like you guys at J.B. Hunt. They founded one of a growing number of organizations that are helping to take up the slack in different areas. It's called the Tip of the Arrow Foundation, and it provides career counseling and transition assistance to returning service members. Collectively, Tip of the Arrow co-founders Carl Blum and Bob Deissig have more than 6 decades of experience in successfully placing managers and executives in jobs. Coincidentally, they each founded a recruiting services firm here in the New York metro area in 1975 to serve Fortune 500 clients. Bob later went on to head the staffing
conflicts and wanted to talk about building an organization. Carl and I had worked together many, many years ago, and he reached out and asked me if we could do this together. I had just retired, and when he described what it was he was looking to do, I just really jumped into it.
Bob is one of the most heavily decorated Vietnam veterans. He's a recipient of 2 Silver Stars, 4 Bronze Stars, 3 with V devices, and 2 Purple Hearts. The Tip of the Arrow is the only free one-on-one job assistance program of
Boonton Township, New Jersey, including fire department president, fire commissioner, and township committeeman. It is really good to have you gentlemen here in the studio with me today, and thanks for coming out on such a rainy morning to Bloomfield College. Tell us how it is that, there's so many coincidences in your lives, how it was that you came together to create Tip of the Arrow, and why the focus on the National Guard and the reservists.
Carl had tracked me down almost 3 years ago. He had decided that he wanted to do something with veterans of the Afghan-Iraq.
This is WBCR in Bloomfield, New Jersey. The time is 11:31, and you're listening to DIY World Improvement. I'm your host, Catherine Carlozzi. All across our country, soldiers who've returned from Iraq and Afghanistan are trying to pick up the pieces of their lives. It's a difficult reentry, made even harder by the lingering effects of the recession. And with so many returning, the government safety net is getting stretched pretty thin. My guest today, Services Division of the Ayers Group, which happens to be one of my clients, and that's where he and I met 9 years ago. Bob and Carl also coincidentally retired at the same time in 2007. Now, these are not the kinds of guys who are happy just sitting around and playing golf. Bob splits his time between Phoenix and New York, and he is a very highly decorated Vietnam veteran who served as captain in the U.S. Army Infantry. Carl became a volunteer firefighter after 9/11 at the age of 59. He held a number of elective offices in